Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to Film Roundtable. My name is Erin Weil. I'm one of the co-founders of this platform. Welcome to our panelists today. We are going to do a talk about Sundance, and we have alumni Sundance producer Alex Orlovsky, who also has a film at the festival this year as well. He's going to moderate for us. And we have Erin Vassilopoulos, director. Her film is called Speaker at Sundance. And then we have Ben Cohen, who is the producer of Superior. And three of them are gonna chat a little bit about what the experience is like at Sundance this year, and just getting into film festival. And with Alex has so much knowledge, so much experience there. We're just gonna have a open conversation about it. Before we do that, I just wanna take a moment of silence to honor all of the 2,134,269 deaths as of today. Today is January 24th. That's a worldwide death count. And then the US count today is 417,000. So we like to do this every time we have a roundtable since we started back in June, just to really honor and remember, how much this pandemic has really affected us on a global level, and to just make space for that. And we also want to honor all of our Black and Brown brothers and sisters, and all of our First Nations brothers and sisters who have been senselessly killed by police brutality or random acts of violence. So we'll just take a moment now. Okay, thank you so much. I'll have Alex start us off, and I'll go dark for a little bit and come back in a little while, but I'll let you guys take it from here and talk about what you'd like to. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Erin. Erin, thank you so much for making this happen. You've had so many amazing people on the Film Roundtable, and personally, I'm honored to be part of it. And I'm excited to talk about this film and about Sundance. And hopefully for those of you who are watching, you'll learn sort of what that experience is like. And okay, so Erin, let's start. Obviously you had a short film, Superior, there 6 years ago now, you were saying?
Yeah, back in 2015.
Got it. And let's talk about how you got started as a filmmaker and sort of what led to you making that short first. You want to tell us?
Sure.
Tell us
yeah.
The story?
I mean, ultimately, I got into filmmaking kind of the old-fashioned, traditional way. I went to film school at NYU, which is where I made the short. I was in school at the time.
Were you undergraduate or graduate?
Graduate.
So you went to NYU grad school. Got it.
And yeah, the short was, everybody does sort of like the big project is the second year film. And so this Superior was that project for me at NYU.
Got it. It was beautiful. Formally, I thought it was great.
Thank you.
It had some like Giallo vibes. It had some, I didn't know where it was going to go, but I really enjoyed it. What did you shoot it on?
Thank you. 16 millimeter film.
I thought that might have been the case. And how did you find the cast first and then decide you had to make a film about them, or was it a vice versa situation?
So I actually wrote the short, which was partially inspired by two of my best friends growing up were fraternal twin sisters, but I think their relationship was definitely in the back of my head. Leading up to this moment in school, and we kind of had to come up with a concept for this short film. And I think I was always like kind of envious of their relationship. Like it seemed both really great and kind of like a curse to have this person, like this other person always around, kind of like your best friend, but also there was like a lot of friction in their relationship. So that was definitely in the back of my head. And then I actually remember getting in the elevator with identical twin sisters when I was at NYU, like right around the time we had to come up with ideas for the project. And like, I think my friend's relationship synced up with like the twins in The Shining and the elevator, just the visual of it. And it kind of clicked. And so I wrote this short, sort of developed it in one of my screenwriting classes, and then had to go about casting identical twin sisters. So I just started putting out sort of like casting calls, posting on different platforms, and actually like bringing flyers to some of the acting studios in New York. And the twins, Ani and Alessandra Mesa, who I ended up working with, were both studying acting at the time. And I think one of their professors saw like a flyer I had posted and encouraged them to reach out. So I met them that way.
Got it. And how long was the script?
I think it was like 17 pages, 18 pages.
And the movie was like 15 minutes, something like that. So in the zone.
Mm-hmm.
And so you shot it and then submitted it to Sundance. How, and were you surprised? I mean, no one, it's sort of shocking.
No, I was like so shocked. Like I didn't expect anything. I don't know. Yeah, you just submit to all these festivals without knowing at all what will come of it. I was totally shocked when I got the call, and obviously super thrilled.
Got it. And when did you finish the film and when did you submit it? Just from like a time frame?
Yeah.
Were you rushing? Was it like it had been done for a while and you submitted it, or what was
I remember like that project, you spend a really long time on it, like an insane amount of time for a short film, which I mean, it's good because you're learning and like we were workshopping it in so many classes, but it definitely was like really polished. And I think it was definitely finished when I submitted. And I guess that would have been a year, like the fall before 2015. So fall of 2014, maybe summer 2014.
And so it went to Sundance. And what happened then? Did your life change immediately? Obviously, there was a 6-year sort of window. There's always such crazy journeys between like shorts and features. So
I think because of where I was at, I was like still in the middle of film school and didn't have a ton of experience yet. And hadn't written a feature. So it was interesting to kind of go to Sundance. And I mean, it was an incredible experience. And then, the short went on to play at some other big festivals and it was great. But I definitely didn't like have a feature ready to go or anything like that. So it was definitely like a huge boost. And I also continued to work with the same DP after that, and became really close with Ani and Alessandra in the process. So that kind of carried over, but like quite a bit of time elapsed between the short and when we started writing the feature. I co-wrote the feature with Alessandra, one of the twins.
Okay. And was that sort of like an obvious choice, or was it something like, when did you guys start writing the feature?
Really?
How many years after?
I guess it was like 2018. So a few years after. So we had all graduated from, they had also been at NYU studying acting. We had all graduated and were like trying to get other projects off the ground. And Alessandra had also gotten more into screenwriting since we made the short. And I think we had such a good experience working together that we just wanted to work together again. And we all felt really connected to the world of the short and just were sort of excited about the idea I mean, at first, honestly, we didn't know for sure that we were going to write something based on the short. But Ali and I got together and pretty quickly got excited about the idea of creating like a jump in time where the story picks up with the same twin sisters 6 years later.
Got it. And Ben, when did you get into the film industry? What was your sort of entry point?
I always knew that I wanted to do it, but I didn't go to film school actually. I was thinking about it, but I went to Brown University, but I did one semester in London through NYU. And I met some filmmakers there that when I went back to Brown for my senior year, we all shot a like $7,500 feature together. They came up to Brown and we used my younger brother's dorm room as the main location. And my younger brother actually still lives with me now, in this apartment that I'm in right now. But so we made that feature. I think we had these crazy expectations that it would like get into Sundance or something like that and be crazy successful, but that was misguided in retrospect. And then so I moved to the city after that, and I started to try to like figure out how to get involved in the business. And actually I took a job for a bit interning for your company at the time, Alex.
Yeah, no, I remember. And was that your first industry thing, or had you done other stuff before that? Not that was like an industry thing, but
yeah, I think that actually was. I had made that feature just, figuring it out. I produced it. My friends James Benson and Bernardo Brito directed it, and then I took I worked, just kind of random jobs in the city for a year, and then I took that job interning for you. But then 2 short films that I had also made for really cheap independently got into Sundance later that year. So that's
with those same guys who you still work with.
Yeah, Bernardo directed one of the shorts called Yearbook, and the other one was directed by another one of my friends, Efren Hernandez. It was called Master Muscles, and both of those shorts premiered at Sundance in 2014. So it was at that point that I kind of decided to break off and try to do it on my own, figure out the producing thing.
Got it. And when did the two of you connect?
So I participated in the Sundance Labs with a different project that is supposed to go into production this year, pending like what happens with the pandemic and things like that. And that project was delayed for a variety of reasons. And so another alumni of the labs had introduced me to Erin and said that we should get coffee and meet. And so we met, and she told me about Superior, and I think I was maybe the first person that she had sent that first producer she had sent that script to, because it had been recently completed. And I just read it and I really responded to it like right away. So I wanted to figure out a way to get the project made, and I had this kind of like window as well to make it. So I felt this strong urgency to help Erin figure out a way to get it done, and that's when we kind of teamed up and started the process of making it.
Very cool. And Erin, so what have you been doing just like in the time from the short to the feature? Were you working in the industry in other positions? Were you sort of like, what's your kind of path been over the past few years as you've been figuring this film out?
I mostly was, for 2 more years, I was focused on school and got to make a couple other short films. I had also been writing another feature sort of at the time that Ali and I teamed up. And for work, I was mostly after school teaching a bit for a nonprofit in Brooklyn that places teaching artists in sort of like underserved schools around Brooklyn.
Very cool. And
I was also sort of shooting and editing some promotional stuff for them, and some other odd jobs, like piecing together freelance work and teaching. But no, I hadn't really I worked on set a lot in school. That's a big part of the way NYU functions. But outside of that, I didn't really I was sort of focused on writing and developing was lucky enough to get to focus on writing and developing my own work.
Got it. And yeah, I'll never forget when we shot Half Nelson, which was actually a similar story because they made their short 4 or 5 years before, and then it was a very long journey. I believe that Anna was working as a receptionist at a doctor's office, and her last day of work was like right before we formally started prep. And Ryan was working as a PA for Entertainment Weekly for like a red carpet camera crew. And when we were at the Gotham Awards, that red carpet camera crew was actually covering him on the red carpet. You know, a year and a half later or whatever. But it's like it's always very challenging and tricky to get that first feature made and kind of find ways to make ends meet. I have like 10 shorts on my IMDb from when, that period when I was just like, all right, like I'll produce shorts to do whatever. So I know it's always sort of a crazy journey. And so you had the script. So when was the script sort of ready? Like when did you guys meet for the first time?
It was like spring of 2019.
Oh, wow. So this wasn't a crazy long journey from you having the script to the movie getting made.
No, it was, no, it happened really quickly. And I was like in disbelief, honestly. And I think the script wasn't completely done when we met Ben, because then Ben sort of helped continue to develop it and we finished the script.
And when did you shoot it?
Late 2019.
Okay.
Like
I think
November, December.
Right.
2019.
Oh, that's exactly when we shot our film as well, pretty much. So, okay.
So we sat down in, I think, May of 2019, and our first day of shooting was maybe November 4th, I think. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, oh, wow.
It was a pretty fast turnaround.
That's amazing. And obviously the twins were the main cast. So you had them.
Yeah.
Did you have sort of like all the elements in place and we're just looking for a producer who sort of saw it and was ready to go? Or were there other roles that you had to fill to kind of justify the financing, or what was like, and Ben, maybe you can talk about sort of how you put the film together a little bit as well.
Yeah.
We can't talk about how much it cost. It cost $7 million because you have to sell it. So we're not allowed to talk about budgets. That's as much as I would like to. We have to, we must wildly inflate the number.
Well, the two leads were predetermined, which I'm grateful for because they're great in the film, and I really like their work in the short as well. And as Erin mentioned, Alessandra co-wrote it with Erin. So a lot of times when trying to figure out the financing and the kind of, lower budget indie type projects, you want to find that lead and then kind of build out the project from there. But that wasn't going to be the way we were going to go about it this time because the leads were already figured out. And I think that actually allowed for the process to go faster because we didn't take that extended period to find an attachment. So we hired a casting agent to figure out like like two male leads in the project, and we built the cast together, but that wasn't really going to factor into the financing. I think what made us able to make the project quickly is it was this really like natural pairing of the text of the script with the short film. And the short, it's not a feature version of the short. The story picks up from 6 years after the short left off. I think sometimes there's a challenge in trying to like take a great short and turn it into a feature because there's might not be enough of a story there necessarily. Like a great short to me is not necessarily like funny, but sort of structured like a joke almost. It's like kind of an idea and then a punctuation. Whereas a feature, you have to kind of have a story that justifies that duration. So with the script and the short, I could kind of see on a micro level, like what the project was going to feel like. And I was really like inspired to figure out a way to work on a project like that, because I could feel like both the influences and Erin's singular voice merging together in a way that was really exciting for me. But then this story of the feature too was something that I felt was very compelling and would appeal to hold an audience's attention for sure over that feature length time. So I was able to like speak passionately about it and just piece together the financing through like individuals.
And do you have sort of like a group of financiers or investors that you generally sort of approach, or is it sort of like you're remaking the wheel every time you do it as a producer?
I think it's been like different every time. I think when you work in like on a different project right now, we have to attach a lead first, and therefore like we're kind of working with the agencies to try to figure out how to package the movie. But in this situation, it was more like going to people that I knew had an interest in, filmmaking in general, had supported my projects in the past, and who I think would just respond to the material, because the project is incredibly like singular in my mind, so it stands out and you can tell pretty quickly whether or not it's for you, I think.
Got it. And did you go to the labs or do anything sort of Sundance Lab related, Erin, in the process of creating this, or you just sort of did it? And you also, it sounds as though do you have an agent now?
I don't. I've been talking to
Sure,
people
now
recently.
They're all coming and knocking on your door. And we'll talk about that as well. So I think that's also an interesting point, because it's uncommon. I think the agencies just touch so many aspects of this industry. And I think it's unique to New York that projects can be put together sort of outside of that. And it speaks to the New York film community. And I think that's just like, it's cool to see and refreshing. Whereas so many other projects, it's just like, John and the Hole, for example, the one that I have is like, it's like UTA all the way from top to bottom. And that's kind of like, it's sort of that agency is like in the film's DNA. And it's, so, but now that of course, your feature was accepted to Sundance, you're having the agencies reach out to you and kind of start the courtship or whatever. And we'll talk about the sort of virtual Sundance of it all, which is completely insane, because otherwise we would be doing a physical premiere and you'd have 10 agents trying to talk to you. It's like,
I mean, I'd be curious to hear, I don't know if you're ready for that, but just sort of like
sure,
your first experiences at Sundance and
oh sure,
and also how you got into filmmaking, if you want to talk about that at all.
Sure. I went, it's kind of insane, but my first Sundance was 2000. And I was like in my early 20s with, there's a great producer named Paul Mazzei, who was sort of like our mentor / he was like the adult in the room when me and my old partners, Hunter Gray and Tyler Brody, were all, kind of trying to figure out how to be credible producers. But I had worked on a film called The Intern with Dominique Swain that was like it was like a cynical look at the fashion industry, written by a woman named Jill Cardman, who they wrote like a really funny, incisive, sort of cutting script that was in, I think it was called the Spotlight section at that point. But I was just along for the ride. Like I wasn't really paying attention to the industry and was like, frankly, quite immature. And we just partied, and it was like, Paul Mazzei was next door with a film called Our Song that Michael Stipe and Jim McKay had produced. It was actually Kerry Washington's first film. And so we were all together. And then I went back 6 years later with Half Nelson as like my first quote unquote real movie. And at that point, I was working with the producer named Jamie Patrickhoff, who we actually did a 10-year Blue Valentine anniversary talk 2 nights ago, which was it was great to like reconnect with those guys and sort of revisit that. But Half Nelson was the movie that Jamie, Lynette, and I like that was our first film together. And so that one did come through an agency. It was like I got into the film industry working with somebody that I grew up in Texas, but I ended up going to boarding school because my parents were teachers, and they just thought, you know, they valued education and decided that was like the right path for me. And there was a woman named Galt Niederhofer who was in my high school class, and she dropped out of college and become a producer at a very young age. And when I moved to New York trying to figure out, I thought I was going to go into the literary world, but she was a producer. Her movie won Sundance the year before. It was like so cool and insane. And I went to her and was just like asked if I could intern for her while I was trying to find a job. And there was like a job at a literary agency and a movie going into production and a job at a magazine. And I had like these two sort of paths. And I was like, you know what, I want to work in this movie. Like this seems like so much more of like the romantic ideal of like creative life in New York. And we, you know, the office was on Worcester Street, it was like 51 Worcester Street between Grand and Broome and Soho. And, you know, it was just, Paul Mazzei was upstairs, Gil Holland was around the corner. It was like, you know, that was kind of like, that was how I got sort of sucked in and never looked back. And then I met Jamie a few years later, and like we worked together. I got my first full producing credit with Jamie on this film called Point and Shoot. And then Half Nelson was our second film. And to bring this full circle, we were like, oh, I think like we'd like to have a film that would go to Sundance. So let's look at Sundance Lab projects. And there's an agent named Craig Gestell, who's like sort of an iconic figure in like the Sundance kind of world. He gave us Half Nelson. And at the time, Chris O'Donnell was actually attached to it, who was also a William Morris client. And collectively, like we were like, okay, we'll commit to doing this. And then it turned out that Ryan Gosling wanted to do something that had like social, you know, had some sort of social significance, or like, you know, had something to say. And then he connected with the directors, and that's where it kind of like became very tangible and real. That was actually a horrible Sundance experience. The film premiered. We got like a couple offers, but it was very sort of like lukewarm. And then our agents were like, look, guys, just wait. Like, I think you're going to win some awards at the awards ceremony. So let's just not do anything till the awards ceremony. And then that'll like give us the momentum to kind of like get this figured out. And then we didn't win anything. And they were like talking to us under like the bleachers or whatever. They're like, okay, guys, like we gotta just like, let's just sell the movie. Like, and it's like a really insane, like Sundance can be such an insane roller coaster. Like, you know, it's like, there can be such highs, there can be such lows, but it's also like, it's a marathon. Like what happens at the festival, I'm always like, just because your movie got into Sundance, like that's where your problems start. Like you think you're like, you got it all figured out. It's like, that's when things sort of like, the journey really begins, you know? And so we were like super bummed and just like, oh man, we thought this movie was so special. Like, why doesn't anybody see it that way? What do we do? And then a couple of days later, there was sort of like the IndieWire does this like critics, you know, they'll sort of do like the ranking of what critics like what movie's best. And Half Nelson was the top, you know, it was like top 1 or 2. And then with performances, and suddenly it was like, oh wow, the critics really thought this movie was special. Like, and it was this very slow sort of build of momentum from there. But that was before Twitter. That was before like, any of those things. Now it's just like you're like you walk out of your premiere like looking at your phone, like refreshing Twitter, like, and it's just like it's a very different sort of instantaneous thing now. And now it's even weirder because we're doing the virtual version of that. So, you know, so we'll kind of see, like, this is gonna be, we're part of like a grand experiment, you know, and I think we have to give a shout out to Kim Utani and John Nine and the rest of the programmers
Yes.
for like actually figuring this craziness out, you know.
For sure.
It's amazing. Yeah.
It's so, and I think they're trying some things that hopefully will stick around, you know. It's like, it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, that was my first, so Half Nelson was like my first sort of experience as a producer. And I've been back a bunch since then. And I've had sort of like every possible version of Sundance you could imagine, from like incredible to like quite, you know, quite hard. But it's like, but we love making movies, so we keep doing it. When did you find out that your movie got into Sundance?
It was like maybe 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, or 1 week before Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And when did you submit it?
We submitted in early October or late September, maybe.
Got it.
It was kind of late. Yeah, like October.
Yeah.
And how, sorry, go ahead.
In a way, because, you know, everything shut down, being able to focus on the edit of Superior was a nice outlet, and that process, we had some time to dedicate to it and really find the story again. But then when it came time to finishing, you know, you're battling, you know, different things that come up with the pandemic that that slowed the process down a little bit. So it was kind of this slower editing phase, and then kind of a scramble to get the film ready to submit.
And then again, once we found out, like a scramble to finish the film.
Yeah.
I'm sure for everybody it's like that, but it was crazy.
100%. I mean, it's like,
yeah,
it's like you're gonna, no matter how much time you have, you're gonna like somehow manage to just like jam it all to the end.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I think Erin, though, luckily is someone who immediately likes to tackle a problem when it emerges, or
yeah, I'm like
super
type A.
So we get ahead of things, which is great. but
did you have had you worked with the editor before? Who was the
a little bit. She's actually she was my first editing professor at NYU. So I had her at NYU, and we were like kind of friends that way. And she had kind of helped me out with a little music video once. But she kind of always said, like, if you make a feature, like, I want to edit it. And I didn't really like believe her. But then, yeah, I met with some editors, and then ultimately I had kind of made a really loose rough cut once we got the footage back, and we were sharing that with editors, and I was honestly feeling like a little like uncertain about it all, just because like when you do that first long cut, it's like, what is this? Like, it's a really weird feeling, and it's honestly, I felt, I wasn't at my most confident. And then I had this meeting with Jen, our editor, and she's just like, oh, like, I see this movie and like I really want to do this. And she was just like so positive, and it was a real boost, and just just convinced me it was a great fit. And
did you do the first assembly?
We had an assistant editor who was kind of like working on scenes while we were shooting, but then I took over once we were done shooting and did like a really rough assembly / rough cut. And
how long was your first assembly?
It was really long, right?
Yeah, I was maybe 2.5 hours actually.
Yeah.
And how long is the finished film?
Like an hour and 39 minutes.
Yeah, but I think with the assembly, we wanted to see everything that we had, and And
Yeah, of course.
yeah.
Yeah.
What percentage of the movie did you cut? Any scenes you were like shocked that you cut, or sort of were like super devastating to you that you had to get rid of them?
I mean, not devastating. I actually really, I co-edited with Jen, with our editor, and and she helped me really treat the editing process as like its own phase of rewriting, and like tear myself away from the script a little bit. So we really did make some bold cuts, and I find when it's working, it's really exciting. I don't think I try not to get like, I mean, I definitely get attached to things, but
Yeah, I think the
I can't.
collaboration you had with Jen, that, you know, I took a look at the first 30 minutes or so once they had started working together, and it found a kind of a new rhythm in a way. And it was at that point, I knew that they were gonna make something like really special. Like it was just clear that the language was being clarified.
Yeah, I think because of the way the script sort of progresses, there was only so much rearranging we could do.
Yeah.
But within those limits, we did a lot. Like we did a lot of cutting, and there's certain elements that could be moved around, and we really did like move stuff around. So
Were you guys able to do any rough cut screenings before the pandemic kind of shut everything down, or were you sort of forced to
no, we
do
did.
it all virtually?
It was all virtual.
Yeah, I think one of like the last things I did in public was that first meeting with Jen.
Oh wow.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
We had like a coffee or something. Yeah.
it was like a rare,
That's so crazy.
really nice day in
Yeah.
March or February, and we're leaving dimes in Chinatown, and like everything felt like great because the meeting went really well. And then little did I know I wouldn't be getting like coffee with someone in person for a really long time.
For years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so wild. We were able to do 2 rough cut screenings, one in LA and one in New York, before everything stopped.
That's so nice.
But I was just talking to another filmmaker who shot a movie in November, and his is it's actually like a work for hire thing where there's different producers with different agendas, and you're just talking about how challenging it is to like try to do all this stuff in the subjective vacuum where you can't like put everybody in a room with an audience and just be like, let's, like, the audience sort of speaks for itself, you know?
Yeah.
So it's crazy. And yeah, we did virtual color correct. I mean, all these things. It's just like, so.
Oh, really? What about your sound?
You know, we actually ended up doing our sound mix in Mexico at this place called Splendor Omnia. And our sound designer was in Paris. And they're just people that the director had like discovered and was like, these are the people I want to work with, it was like insanely complicated logistically, but we had, the film got flipped union. So, which meant that if we would have done sound in New York, it would have been much more expensive and challenging. So we were just like, you know what, if that's creatively what you want to do, go for it. And so he ended up going down to Mexico in like September to do the sound mix, and just, you know, took the safety precautions in the plane, whatever. And so did do that in person, but it's like in the mountains somewhere outside of Mexico City.
Yeah.
The filmmaker Carlos Regatas started the place. It's, I mean, it's like,
yeah.
I was so mad that I couldn't go because it just seemed
yeah.
like the greatest thing ever. Like, but it just wasn't like, sadly, this was not like with I Origins, we did the sound mix at Skywalker Ranch and we're like, okay, like field trip to Skywalker, and it was just like a big party. But now I have a small child in the pandemic, so it's like no trip, no Mexico trip for me, you know.
Yeah.
But so he did that, and then the color we did at Company 3 in New York, but we did it virtually. And you know, it was, and the cinematographer was in Europe, so that was quite challenging, and took a lot more time than it would have otherwise. But
yeah,
Company 3 was very gracious and just kind of like gave us the wiggle room to sort of get it right. But we were definitely doing that until the very, very, very last minute.
Yeah.
So what did you shoot on?
We also shot on 16.
Oh, you did? So amazing.
Yeah.
So you sort of honored the
I was so grateful to our producers, actually. Like really
so
early
cool.
on, they were like supportive of that because they had seen the
Oh,
short.
that's incredible.
Just sort of knew that. Yeah.
And we were working with
I
the
mean,
DP as the short, so.
Okay, cool. Well, that's great. I love when those sort of relationships carry on. And I thought the music in the short was excellent also, like the cues. Are you going to try to sort of bring that same vibe back, or what's?
Yeah, the feature is the short was sort of like, it wasn't specific to any time. I mean, it feels dated, I think, and it has kind of like an anytime feel. Or did you feel that it was 80s? The feature is definitely set in the 80s. So the music is a little more specific to it's 80s music mostly.
Okay, got it. Yeah, that was actually what I liked so much about the music in the short, was that it was like Dirty Beaches is so specific and retro but modern, and just adding that to like the Super 16 photography and everything else. I think you created like a very singular, like it felt like a very singular voice, which I appreciated. So but yeah, it could have been, it's like in its own parallel, it's like Lynchian universe or whatever, you know.
I think the feature also feels that way.
Cool.
And there's a lot of music, and that was actually, that was one of the aspects that kind of took the longest, finishing just
figuring out the music.
Yeah, and I'm really happy with where it landed, but it took a long time
to
find music we could license that fit,
right.
you know. That
got it. Just because it was
really
expensive and complicated, or
mostly expensive, but then I got super lucky and sort of got turned on to this like trove of 80s music by this guy in Brooklyn who runs some labels and had been sort of like slowly buying the rights to music to reissue a bunch of music specifically from the early 80s. So that was like really lucky. Once he shared,
he was your savior and kind of like had this treasure trove.
I think so. To me, yes.
Very cool.
From the original music we were editing with, we were able to get a few of the tracks.
Got it.
And like one slightly bigger track by going through the band's manager, My Bloody Valentine song.
Oh yeah. There wasn't a My Bloody. Was there a My Bloody Valentine cue in the original, in the short?
I don't think so. No.
I can't remember.
No.
It's a very painful time when you're producing, when the director starts to learn how expensive some of the music is, even music.
It's hard.
It's crazy.
It's really hard.
It's pretty. It's kind of unpredictable.
Yeah, it's really. It can be super heartbreaking also when you are like, there's something that you fall in love with and you just like, it's just never going to be within reach, you know.
Yeah. But it was honestly it was a good lesson in that I'm actually happier with where the music landed, because it's like more obscure. It's like music that I really like, that a lot of it I discovered in this process, and I think it is even more specific than what I had been editing with.
Very cool.
Yeah, it worked out really well this time, but it
could have been really bad.
It's scary for a moment and then worked out.
Especially if you're under a time crunch and you just have to like find music. It could be really hard, really bad.
I mean, it's like normally Sundance feels so permanent, where it's like that's your version of the movie, the end, but this just feels so kind of like ephemeral. And I think we can talk about all that stuff, but it's like, we're making a quick time for Sundance. Like you could open up the movie the next day and like change whatever, but
don't say that.
But it's good if you're feeling confident. I mean, I don't think we're going to change our movie either, but there are other times where it's like, it can be a much more kind of like contentious or just sort of like hard process where you're showing something and there's not like a universal kind of agreement about whether it's the right version. Okay, so you got into Sundance. When did CAA come knocking on your door? Because they're selling the movie, which you told me briefly, but like we should talk about that sort of aspect of the process. So how did that come about?
We were meeting with a variety of sales teams, and I think just the meeting with them went really well. They like really understood the voice of the project, and I could tell that the things that they were drawn to were the same things that we prize in the work. So and Erin can speak maybe on this as well, but it just you could just tell that the feeling was best with them, and after we were kind of buzzing with excitement, so it felt like an easy choice.
Yeah, and they had come, I think, yeah, they had reached out to me leading up to the announcement. I think all the agencies find out.
A little birdie whispered in their ear that
which I didn't know. It was funny. We kept trying to break the news to people and they were like, yeah.
But Alex, I don't know if how you did it in the past, but in a previous feature that I had at the festival, we took the Blu-ray around, we went on a trip to LA and took the Blu-ray to the different agencies, and they screened it for 2 hours, and then we have a meeting right after, and then some of the sales agencies in New York, we did the same thing, and then we kind of chose after that, but we obviously couldn't do that this year, so it was all links to the project and phone calls after.
A lot more links. I used to be so anti sending links to anyone, and now it's just become very sort of common practice. But yeah, I mean, a lot of times a filmmaker will have an agent, and or there's like an actor in it who just like that sort of decides, oh, the leads from WME or Endeavor or CAA or ICM or whoever, and that's sort of like, okay, that's what it is. And then it's like a lot of times it'll end up being split representation, which is just sort of the reality. It's just kind of like the way it is now, because it's just kind of like our film is a UTA ICM co-representation, because I work for a producer financier who's an ICM client, and then basically the filmmakers and everyone else is UTA, and it was sort of, obviously like the money wants somebody who sort of looks out for them and sort of has their best interests at heart, whereas the filmmakers agents are going to want what's best for the filmmakers. So it's like there's always kind of like a narrative behind how those things happen, but it's it's like back in 2000 there was like, I was on a bus with someone who's like, hi, I work at Sloss Special Projects, like Cinetic didn't even exist, and the agencies weren't even remotely in the film sales game. Like they were a little bit, but like it's from where that sort of started, because then like Micah Green, who was John Sloss's right hand man, went to CAA and sort of like started the CAA kind of advisory, like independent film thing in earnest. And obviously like now all the agencies have that in a very robust way, but like, so you met with, so they basically all reached out to you once the film was announced, or sort of right before, kind of like courting you and kind of like having those conversations.
I guess we should say we participate in IFP as well. So IFP in New York. So through
IFP, you did the No Borders or whatever the IFP market was?
We did, they have like a finishing lab. So it was like a 3-part lab. Yeah, I forgot to mention that. That was really helpful.
Also, kind of what you were talking about before with like the New York filmmaking community making a movie, IFP, and then also the moment when we were talking to the various sales teams was a change, because the movie was like made sort of fiercely independent. Like when we were in upstate New York shooting it, like I don't think anybody in the industry like knew we were up there. And then it was kind of like with the Sundance announcement and then those meetings, it was kind of like slowly kind of informing people about the project, and kind of that was kind of a fun moment, because it was so close to us for so long.
Yeah, it's like incredible when it's so rare that something's like truly out of nowhere in this day and age, or even that it just sort of like gets built outside of the agency and sort of like casting and packaging world. So I do think that that's very cool and commendable. And so you signed with CAA to sell the movie, and so now you're sort of dealing with the talent agent side of it, Erin, or the lit agent, I should say, side of it, right?
You mean taking meetings and things?
Yeah, or like having
Yeah.
people sort of reach out to you.
Yeah. I've had some calls with different agents and managers.
Zooms, I guess, right?
Zooms or calls.
And Zooms, yeah. And yeah, to go back to what you were asking before, it's like, and then sort of what one of the fundamental differences is, like, it's been a minute since I've done a film at Sundance where it's sort of like a clean slate, sort of like the director wasn't represented, or, it wasn't kind of like on the radar. But God, I guess like Another Earth, that was like a true like lightning bolt out of nowhere situation where no one knew, like Britt Marling was just like, no one knew who she was. No one knew who Mike was. And then Zal had a movie there as well, Sound of My Voice. And so it was like this crazy, it became like this whole crazy thing, but the programmers very strategically like put Another Earth in Eccles on Tuesday at the very end of like all the competition movies. And like normally that's a big thing, is you like, when is your slot? Like, what's the strategic best place to do this? What are you up against? Like, are we going to be able to get people there? Because so much of it is like that magical kind of like moment in the theater. And so at Another Earth, like, I know, which is obviously just like, it's super frustrating, but I know that there's like our movies will all be seen in theaters again sooner rather than later. But like,
it just made me think about the fact that like, I think I'm one of the only people who's seen it in a theater, like just when we were color grading.
Oh, totally. It's crazy.
No one else, and that was only at the very end of the process,
Yeah.
And I was like, this is amazing. Like, I was so happy because I was crazy. Like, I've only seen the movie on a laptop. I was editing on the laptop with a external monitor, but.
And all the buyers are going to see it on a laptop. And
it is very, very different.
It's just nuts. It's super. But the only positive thing is it's a level playing field, and it's not. They did Toronto this way. They've done like everything is this, so it's not. It's it's sort of like everyone's accustomed to it, which is the only sort of like positive thing you can say. But no, I think as far as like, so with Another Earth, like people freaked out over that movie. And then like Mike went from being sort of like this completely anonymous person to someone with like, where it's just like, all the agencies like jumped on him. And he ended up signing with Craig Castell. This is like 2011. Wait, yeah, I think it was. So that was like Craig as an agent, and you're going to sort of like make these decisions about like who's the right person for you to sign with, like what's the appropriate, because it's sort of like an important relationship. Like Craig's done this amazing job of taking all these independent filmmakers and guiding them into like massive studio jobs, where somehow it doesn't seem like a sellout or inappropriate or whatever, which is like incredible. But back then he was like, he hadn't done any of that, so he was sort of like this up and coming guy. And now it's like Ryan Coogler, Cary Fukunaga, Ryan and Anna, like, the huge directors. So he's not sort of like all in the indie film sort of Sundance world the way that he once was. And I know now there's other agents who are doing the same thing, so it's like, it's sort of like a very important and personal choice. But yeah, it's confusing because you're not seeing them face to face. You don't get the benefit of like,
Yeah. I do think it's a little
It
harder,
makes sense.
but
it is.
I'm just
Yeah.
gonna kind of like take my time and keep the conversations going with people, because I think it'll take a few
Do you have the
conversations
thing that you want to
virtually.
do next also?
I do have this other script that I had been working on before Superior, and sort of alongside it, that I'd like to make next. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's not like ready to go, but that's kind of what I plan to pivot to after
do,
this.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing. It's like knowing what the next thing is and who's sort of like best positioned to help you with that. Because it's like CAA's has an incredibly deep bench of talent and sort of all these other things, and they're actually becoming insanely filmmaker friendly. Like I think it's remarkable how kind of like attuned to sort of the independent film thing they are right now.
Right.
Like it's surprising and interesting to me, but like, UTA is like amazing for filmmakers. Like ICM's got like, there's like really amazing sort of indie lit, sort of lit filmmaker agents there are just like will bust their ass for you. Like WME's has sort of like all these other kind of like ancillary things they can bring to the table, but a lot of it is just like, who is that person that you want to kind of like trust your career with? And do they want the same thing as you? Because I've also like worked with filmmakers who like had like incredible like auteur success, and then they're just like, they just want to keep being auteurs, and their agents are like, no, like do these studio movies, like I can get you this job. And it's like, that's just not everyone's like cut out for that, and it's like, so but then it's like, if you want writing gigs, if you want to do like for hire stuff, if you want to start directing TV, it's like, those are the other kind of things that you'll like, that you can sort of like, everyone's gonna have their own pitch. And it's just, or is like an even smaller agency the right place for you? It's yeah, it's interesting, but yeah, I'm missing that's where kind of like the physical sort of, like it feels like that's where it stings,
Yeah.
And you were asking like before, you're like, this must be a crazy week, like how do you feel getting ready for Sundance?
If you could compare the lead up to, I mean, yeah, it's quite different, obviously.
It's insane. Like I'm actually, it's almost like confusing to me, because it's like, first of all, you have to travel like 30 people to Sundance. So there's just like the logistical, because it's like your two leads, obviously like the twins are going to go. And then there's cinematography, it's like your crew, who you, of course, you want them to come. And then there's like, are there other actors who like maybe are just central to the film, but like want to come anyway, and you like don't want to hurt their feelings by not having them come. And then it's like the financiers all want to come, and suddenly it's like, holy cow, I've got 40 people that I'm responsible for, all of whom are gonna like, or like any one of them who can get like offended if they feel like slighted or ignored, because like they all believe that they had like some singular contribution to the film. And it's like, if you don't get them the right tickets, or like care enough about where they're staying, or like make sure that they're included in like the party list or whatever, it's just like, and I've like gotten in big fights with like financiers because they like gave all the tickets away, and I'm just like, what are you guys doing? Like, you can't give our finite number of tickets to the premiere to like these random people, when I have like all these guys who worked on the movie who I need to get them in. Like, it's just, none of that is an issue, so that's like, and then it's sort of, where are you going to do your party? Like, and this is stuff that's like kind of stupid, but also like weirdly important, because
I'm definitely not getting to get together also with our cast and crew is like, I mean, it's tough. But
and it's like, we've got obviously like these Zoom Q&As or whatever, like, and I think Sundance is working really hard to create the most kind of like special environment that they can, but there's all of this crazy ancillary like work and logistical challenges that normally you'd have to deal with that are just like don't even exist.
Yeah.
I
The
know.
one, oh, go ahead, Ben.
No, I was gonna say like I strangely like feel less anxiety or something when there's a lot of stuff to do and handle.
Yeah.
All of those logistics that you're talking about. I'm kind of in my mind. I'm like, the premiere's a week away. Like, why aren't I taking care of that stuff?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's strange.
Yeah.
It's really,
Yeah, it feels odd.
it's really weird.
But it is a strange kind of balance of emotions, because I think when we set out to make the film, with Erin having had the short at the festival, and I had been through the labs and had a number of projects at the festival, this was our dream goal while making it to premiere at Sundance. So it's incredibly exciting, and like we're very appreciative of the programmers for including us. So there's this insanely excited feeling, but then there's also this kind of adjustment that we're having to it all being on virtual, that I think is exciting in some ways, but also, as Erin was mentioning, like disappointing that we won't be able to have that party with all the crew members and cast members.
Yeah, it's like it's a bummer, but I have to believe that there's going to be that party in 6 months or whatever, because it's like you take your movie to Sundance to introduce it to the world and find the distributor, and then it's sort of like all starts all over again. And that kind of goes back to what I was saying before about like Sundance is just the beginning. Like, and look, I mean, like you have the good fortune of having a film in competition at Sundance, which is insane. There's 10 movies in competition, and it's like, that's amazing. And I know a lot of filmmakers whose movies didn't get into Sundance, some of whom are like, it's quite surprising, you're like, wow, that dude's like lab, this, that, the other. Like, I can't believe they didn't just like put it into premieres somewhere. Like, it's
yeah, no.
But now it's like, okay, so you're gonna introduce your movie to the world, and then it's about distributors. Like, who's the right distributor for it? Like, who's excited? Like, and then it's like, what's the critical response going to be? Like, there's all these sort of like next things that, I mean, it's going to be weird because we're going to be sitting in our living rooms looking at Twitter, right? For like getting our publicists to, and who's your publicist?
Sunshine Sachs.
Sunshine Sachs.
Mm-hmm.
But those big questions that you were describing, instead of being able to distract myself with the logistics of the tickets and the house and all that stuff, I just have to lie in bed looking at the ceiling, like wondering about those questions. That's where I'm at.
Totally.
Right? Yeah.
It's it's super crazy. It's just like, but and have you done some like sort of pre-festival screenings for some like curtain raisers and journalists and stuff like that?
I think they are. Yeah, they are sharing the film with some.
Do little things.
Yeah.
We're having our like first, or not our first, but sort of like our big kind of like a call tomorrow with the agencies and the publicists and all these people to sort of kind of like figure out what's what as we go into this. But yeah, it's going to be anticlimactic and sort of strange.
Yeah. No, I guess I want to jump on what you're saying though, and just I am incredibly excited that our film is premiering at Sundance. So it's really like a lot of mixed emotions, and mainly just like a lot of uncertainty about having never participated in a virtual festival. But I feel like one big upside of the premiere is like a lot of people who wouldn't have traveled to Sundance are going to get to see, like a lot of my family and friends are so excited to watch the premiere of our movie. And I mean, that's, I think that's big.
I think that's the best part of it actually, is that, and I hope that they do that in the future. Like, I think it's something that would have been like sacrilege, you know, like in years past, the idea of like doing a virtual component or having like, you know, just being able to sort of open it beyond Park City itself. And I think it's incredible. And I hope that they can do that again in the future. Like, yeah, like I can have my parents get to go to my premiere, you know, like just family members, other people. Like, I think that's super cool. You know, I think there's so many things like that that are great. And
can I chime in on that real quick? The one thing that I've always felt at film festivals is there's so many films that never see the light of day, right? That are so amazing. Shorts, you know, docs, features. And I think that it's actually kind of a blessing that this is kind of happening, and that hopefully it opens people's eyes, these festival programmers, of like really not making these festivals just for a certain demographic, you know, because the passes are expensive, getting yourself there is expensive. And there are people all over the world that would love to watch some of these films for, you know, now you can get a ticket for Sundance for $15, or, you know, a pass. I think I was offered a pass for like half off because I'm a Sundance alum. And, you know, I think those are things, those are like one of, you know, all these little bright spots in this past year, you know, of how things are going to adjust. And I still think that, you know, even if things go back to normal, I mean, I think you guys are going to have a great festival. It's going to be weird. You're going to be like the first people who did Sundance virtually, but it's, you know, I think there's going to be a lot of positive things that come out of it as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it'll like, we'll be doing the communal sort of version of it again in the not too distant future. Like, after, I mean, you know, you go to Sundance, and the soonest your movie's going to come out, it's June anyway, because you have to sell it and then come up with a distribution plan and all that. So I think like we're going to experience, I think people are just going to be that much more stoked to go to a movie theater again. You know, I think it's going to be like a joyous, I think it's going to be very emotional when we actually like show our films to an audience again, after sort of being forced to not have that. So yeah,
Like moving to New York all over again or something.
yeah. Yeah,
It would be, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Alex, sorry.
It's all good.
I was just going to say it would be interesting to talk about the distribution plan, like how that, you know, what kind of like formula you have for that, or how that's gone down for you in the past, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. For me to do it. Yeah, I mean, it's, yeah, just has CAA sort of like given you, Erin V, like an idea of kind of like who your target distributors are? Do you guys have your kind of like dream people in mind?
I think I think because of the year and the timing, it's feels a little more uncertain, and
Yeah.
that we're kind of playing things more by ear a little bit.
Yeah.
I think also part of it is the, you know, what we've been covering a number of times is making this kind of project, you know, not in the shadow of the industry, like completely independently. I think we need to see what happens with like, you know, the critics' response. Like everybody's going to be finding out about this project at the same time, which is exciting. But
Yeah,
you know,
which is super cool. And there's also like a it's because it's sort of like there's the film, and this is something that's kind of like one of those complicated, it's one of the complicated things about being a producer is like we have like this responsibility to the investors who kind of took a chance on kind of making this thing happen, and it's sort of like what's good for the investors and then what's good for the filmmaker. And I think like for your career, I always say like a film's successful if the director can do whatever they want afterwards, and like the more successful it is, the more kind of like crazy those swings are, like, and it's like, will you get your next film made like that, and are you going to get to make it the way that you want it to? And if that's the case, then that means that like this was a success for you, separate from like, did it sell to the right distributor? Did it make a ton of money? Did it lose a ton of money? Did none of the critics get it? Like, your sort of career is kind of separate from a lot of those realities in a weird way. But obviously, like, the more of those things that go right, it's kind of like the easier some of it will be. But if your next script's just like bulletproof and kind of like people love it, even if this film like doesn't get the reception you were hoping for, it may not even matter. And that goes the other way too, where people like have these crazy Sundance premieres where people freak out over the movie and it sells for $1 bazillion, and then it's like they don't make another movie for 8 years because they're just like wandering in this studio wilderness or just like whatever. So it's like success is like a complicated thing, and I think like there's like many sort of, sometimes like the optics tell a different story than sort of like what really happens. And I've had films that are like really successful but kind of like horrible, not horrible, but like complicated experiences, because it's like there's interpersonal, there's like weird politics or sort of dissatisfaction or whatever. And then there's things that are like, well, the world didn't like that movie, but we love it and we're like friends forever, so who cares? It's kind of like and yeah, it's also going to be strange, like not doing the in-person meetings with distributors and buyers and kind of like seeing them immediately afterwards. And I think we're going to be trusting the sales agents, like the person who sells your film is going to be, it's like the agencies are such sort of like powerful gatekeepers and like control information so much as it is. And I think that this virtual aspect of it is going to make it that much more so, which but it's like so who knows, like I have no idea how this is going to work from a distribution standpoint. Like, it's not like we're going to be standing, normally I'm like lurking in the lobby of whatever the theater is, and I'm like, okay, like I see you guys going in, I saw you looking at your phone through the movie, I saw you leaving 30 minutes like into it, like, oh, you don't want to come to the party, like, oh, you can actually just like really kind of like read the tea leaves based on like, oh, this distributor is like at the party, like really wants to talk to you, like this one's not. Oh, it's sort of, that's where kind of like a direct, like a physical festival is helpful. And only Sundance is the only American festival where it's like, I mean, Toronto is North American, but where it's like everyone's there and everyone's like kind of laser focused on it, versus something like Tribeca where it's much more of like a long lead. There's never like an overnight sale, or rarely overnight sales at Tribeca, but Sundance is like designed to create that pressure cooker environment. So yeah, I think it's going to be more relaxed and more chill, and we're going to see who's buying what and kind of just how it's all going to go. But it'll be, yeah, I don't know. I don't know, man. It'll be strange, that's for sure.
I think in this like independent filmmaking kind of grind where you kind of allude to these complicated decisions and versions of success, you can't, it would be so thankless to do that if you didn't, like, first and foremost, just like really believe in the writer director and like what they can potentially have to say. And so I'm just with you, like I'm very excited to see what Erin goes on and does, and I hope this is a springboard, just like unlimited opportunity for her.
I know we spoke when we did our pre-call about the before and after aspect. And I think after having this call and like listening to you guys, I think it would be really interesting to do another roundtable like next week. And we could do a short one of just, or when the festival closes, or a week after that or something, and just have a recap on some of the stuff we were talking about, on like how the premieres went for each of you, what happened with sales or distribution or just along those lines. It might be interesting to hear a little bit about that if you guys are interested. And I'm sure our listeners would probably be really interested because not everybody's going to have that hands-on experience.
For sure. We'll have to ask permission of our sales reps. They may not want us to discuss what's actually happening depending on what the sort of state of things is. But I think it would be great. Like we definitely, and that's the other thing. It's like sometimes it's overnight, sometimes it takes a month. And yeah, I mean, Half Nelson, to go back to that, it's like a great example of something that just like seemed like such a bust, but then just turned out to be the opposite. Whereas I've had other things that were like, oh my God, like I can't believe this company bought this movie for this much money. And then it's like no one cared about the movie. And it was just like the release was kind of like demoralizing and just rough, So it's sort of, it's an interesting thing. And just like you keep everything in perspective. And I think also because of like Twitter and just sort of like this, everyone's sort of like obligated to do these sound bites where it's like, this movie is blah, blah, blah. Like, what's the kind of like quick, if it's polarizing or if it doesn't feel like you're not getting like the universal love, just like, who cares? It's like, if you made a singular movie, the people who appreciate it will appreciate it. And I also think like agencies and all those people, like as much as it's, you want to knock them or sort of say that they're like these big, like monster, big machines, like they truly care about finding unique voices and supporting them. And I think the best agents, like after Never Rarely, Sometimes Always, like there's one sort of like very big CA agent who've always been like, so, it's like, I'm not intimidated by many people, but he's like, one of those guys is just like, towering figure. And he emailed, it's like, I've been wanting to sign that director forever. Like, she's so amazing. Congratulations. And it was like, wow, that guy like loves that filmmaker. Like, that's incredible,
That's great.
And
I love her work. Yeah.
Eliza's amazing.
The new film, especially. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also kind of calming to know that Half Nelson was a challenging.
I know.
Because that was one of the movies I saw and thought, man, like wouldn't it be amazing to play Sundance?
Yeah. No, yeah, it's good to hear that. Thank you for sharing that.
Alex, what year was that?
2006.
Okay, because I had Bug Crush at that festival.
The same year. And I saw Bug
year.
Crush. I went to the shorts and was like, oh my God, that's the best short I've ever seen, which is a lot of people say.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember I worked with Nicholas Refn. I used to work with him a bunch. And I remember he told me that he saw that film at a film festival in Montreal. He was like, oh my God, that was the best film ever.
Yeah.
But I was invited to that producers conference that they did that summer at Sundance. In the town or at the resort, and you guys were there, and you screened it for all of the producers that were there, and that's when I saw it. Do you remember that?
I do not.
You might have not been there. Maybe somebody, maybe one of your partners was there.
It could have been one of the LA folks who did it, but yeah, no, Bug Crush. I mean, but that's the thing. It's like that's where it's like at Sundance, you wander into a short screening because it's like that's. What do you have time to kill? And then you see something like Bug Crush that's just so strong, and Carter's he's a great example because he did The Ruins. It's like after Bug Crush, he could do whatever he wanted. And it's like but he's back on a journey of like making personal work again.
Right. Right. You did Jamie Marks is Dead, didn't you?
I did. We did Jamie Marks is Dead together, which was sort of like his return to more to I think who he really is as a filmmaker. And now he's like, and that's like a perfect example of someone who like his DNA is his DNA and he's got such a singular voice. And it's like he's not going to be doing like Captain Marvel like Ryan and Anna did, but it's like, that's you know, everyone, it's like you're your own artist, and everyone, there's no right or wrong thing that you should be doing, you know.
Yeah, it was like the first film I ever worked on was Girl Fight, which
Oh
was
wow.
Karen Kusama's first
Yeah, of
film.
course.
And I was an electrician on it because I thought I
Oh my
wanted to
God.
be a cinematographer because I worked as a photojournalist for 7 years. And I thought I wanted to be a DP. So I got a job as an electrician on that through the gaffer, who was a female, to work with Patrick Cady on it and like learn about lighting.
So cool.
It was like the hardest thing I ever did, but it was my entryway into the indie world in the 90s in New York. And, you know, and then that film got into Sundance, and that film was like all women too. It was like all
Yeah.
women. I think Patrick Cady and Steve Beatrice were like the two novel men on the film. And, you know, and John Sloss was one of the producers, but we got into Sundance. It was such a rave at Sundance, and, you know, really didn't do well in the box office. And, you know, it took Karen, I mean, I don't know, Karen's made what, 4 movies maybe since
Yeah, it took her a long time.
Girl Fight. I mean, her second
Perfect
film was
example.
that really big
Aeon
studio,
Flux, right?
yeah, which wasn't, you know, an easy film for her. And then she's done amazing movies. I mean, like Jennifer's Body is like a pretty incredible film, and you know, she's put them out, but it's taken her a long time. And I think after that experience with Aeon Flux, and I'm just say I haven't spoken to her in many years, but you know, for a while we all like kept in touch, and I know that you know, she wanted to get back to her roots. Like that one studio experience was a little bit like traumatic.
Yeah.
So
I don't know how much I should say this, but I actually spoke with her agent recently. Yeah, she said the same thing about the experience, which I appreciate.
About Karen?
Is that
and
Joanne
she
Wiles?
Specifically talked about that, going from a first feature that was, you know, relatively small, and then just like this huge jump, and that it was really tough for both of them. And then kind of she spoke about
you
how
really have to pick your battles, you know?
Yeah.
And it's tough. I remember Carter going through the ruins and how that was, he's like, I just got to decide what I want to fight for and, you know, let go of what else.
It is tricky. Now it's like with Netflix and the streamers, it's a totally different landscape. And I think it's like, there's a lot more creative freedom, but it's, but it's like, Joanne, like she's a great agent, you know, and it's like, if you're her client, like she'll go to war, you know.
I get that sense.
Yeah. And it's like I've worked with her clients a bunch, and you know, my wife's always like, who's that person? Why are they yelling at you? I was like, no, she wasn't yelling at me. That was just like the way that they're like, that's just how like that's just the way it is with Joanne. But then but she's just like, she will tell you the truth, and she like cares deeply, and it's like, I mean, it's agents have very different personalities, and it's like you'll find the right one, you know. It's, I mean, like Ozza Jacobs, another person, is like a great example of someone who just had a long career where it's like very singular and very specific, and he's just like slowly, you know, French Exit is his biggest film and most accessible, but it's like, I did a movie called Mama's Man with him. It's one of my favorite movies I ever worked on. Was like, it starred his parents. We shot it in his parents' apartment, which is like around the corner from where I was living in Tribeca. I'd walk down my stairs around the corner and up the stairs to his place. Like Ozza would get out of his bed, the actor would get into his bed, and we shot it in like scene order.
Oh, that's like, amazing.
It's like such a beautiful, like personal film. And it's like, that was 12 or 13 years ago. And, you know, and it's just like, he's never done anything that wasn't him. And he's like, it's like, that's super commendable and cool. And like, we had a movie called Terry where we could have changed the score and it probably would have been like a much more commercial film. And like, but he's just like, this is what I want it to be. And it was like his version of a high school film, you know. And it's like, in hindsight, you look back at his work and it's like, it all kind of like fits together neatly and just feels so authentic and true. And he's just like had the patience and kind of like, you know, he's he's done it right, I think. And it's like you'll see all different versions of that stuff, where it's like people be like, well, you could be such a bigger director, you could be doing these other bigger things, but it's like if it's gonna be like a horrible sidetrack thing, just like think twice before doing it. And yeah, don't sign with an agent who's going to try to mercilessly jam you into studio movies or sort of like things that you don't feel you should be doing, you know. So
That's good advice.
I'm really hoping that this year does bring out more of those personal films, you know, people trying to make art during this quarantine and what kind of beautiful golden nuggets will come out of that. You know, where film festivals are such great places to see those things because, you know, as I said, a lot of them don't ever see the light of day. So it'll be interesting, you know, to see what's come up this year.
yeah. I'm just glad you started the film roundtable this year and had all these amazing talks so that we can like still feel a sense of community and kind of,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
like, step into other people's perspectives and worlds. So yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great. All right. Well, does anybody have any last things they would like to talk about? Or any, I know there aren't a lot of expectations for going into Sundance, but I would normally ask that question, like, is there something you'd like to see those 5 days? But I mean, if you don't want to answer that question, you don't have to. But if there is anything, you know, and you want to put it out in the world.
I mean, I was going to say, I think I'll have more time to watch movies, which is exciting. Like I am going to try to watch a lot of movies. I've reserved a bunch.
Is that how it's working?
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I have tickets.
Yeah.
No, I do.
Yeah.
Anything
I
for
want
you,
to see
Ben?
Superior.
Or-
I want.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ben.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm excited to see Alex's project, of course, and kind of going through the lineup and making my reservations and purchasing some tickets. I guess we could also give a shout out to Cheyenne Cage because she
Oh yeah.
in a way, and she's an incredible line producer on our project, and very appreciative of all the hard work she put into it. Just incredible.
Yay, Cheyenne.
Yes, thank you, Cheyenne.
Love her. Alex, what about you? What are your hopes with a toddler during film festival? If you can maybe see one or two
I'm
movies.
gonna try. What I've come to learn that like trying to do anything on a schedule is just like kind of a lost cause. So I don't know when is your movie premiering?
The 30th at 9 p.m.
And 9 p.m. Eastern.
Eastern, yeah.
Yeah. That's not happening. I will watch it during the second window or whenever, because I guess that's where they're doing it now. But I'm excited to see that. I have some other friends who have movies. Then I'll like try to watch as many of them as I can. But right now I just don't have a lot of time to watch movies, given that I'm in quarantine with a little dude. But yeah, I mean, I think it's just, I just want our film, I mean, it sounds sort of like, not crass, but like, I want our movie to make its money back, just to reward the people who took a risk on it. And I want it to get the critical response I think it deserves. And I hope it finds a great home, like with a distributor that loves it, you know? And I hope the same for you guys. So
Thank you.
Thank you. Your premiere is on the 29th, right?
it's on the 29th at 3 p.m. Yeah.
Okay. I'm definitely gonna watch it.
Yeah, same.
So
I got my ticket.
Nice.
Anticlimactic, but we'll see how it all goes. And Erin, we're gonna do our ticket allocations, but since we have, I mean, it feels like normally tickets are such a nightmare, but I'd love to give you one.
Thank you.
You can watch it as well.
Appreciate it. Oh,
Thank you. I know we got
you
dual
needed to say
Erins on this.
W.
I know I need to say Erin W.
That's
I assumed that
embarrassing.
you had
No,
right?
I have a pass.
You've got
I can
your
just
pass or
reserve.
something, right?
Yeah.
You should be able to do whatever. You're the director, so
I
you have
got it.
freedom
I got tickets.
Yeah, I
to
would
do
love to
stuff,
see it.
but,
That would be great.
um,
That could be my Friday night.
there you go.
Or no, Friday afternoon, but that's
Friday
fine.
afternoon.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, well, it would be a lot of fun.
I think it would be really great to regroup.
Yeah.
Even if
So
we're not allowed to say exactly what happened, we can count our new gray hairs together or something.
yeah, you could talk about other things. You could just talk about the experience in general, and that you're in conversation with people. You could put it that way. It can be very vague. But I just want to thank you all for taking this time to chat about this. It was a great conversation. And there's so much to talk about. I feel like it could actually have gone on a lot longer. But I think that this is a good place to end. And yeah, we'll continue it. I'll circle back with you guys, after the festival's over and when things settle down a little bit. But thank you so much. And we're going to post this on Friday. So I'll just circle back with you guys on an email because there's a few things I'll need from you guys for that.
All right, looking forward to it.
Thank you so
Erin.
much. Yeah, so glad to have you guys.
Thanks,
Have a
Alex.
great weekend. I wish you the best this coming week and then the following.
Yeah, thank you, Erin Weil.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Mhm.
Thanks, Alex.
And yeah, thanks, Alex.
Talk to you.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.